Hi everyone, here's the book chemist once again. Today I'm reviewing The Door by Magda Szabó, a surprising book in more ways than one. It's first and foremost a very deceptive book. It's a story that seems straightforward as you approach it, but reveals various layers of complexity as you keep exploring it. It's also a very meaty, fairly lengthy novel masquerading as a very slim paperback. I found it quite a difficult read, but I think that to the right reader, this is going to be an extremely stimulating experience, and I thought it was worth flagging it to you. The premise behind the novel is very simple. This is an auto-fictional work where the narrator is a fictional alter ego of the writer herself. The narrator is also called Magda. She's also a writer, and she is extremely busy. Her husband and her are both intellectuals. She is writing a lot following a period of inactivity due to censorship from the Hungarian government. The novel is set in Hungary, and because she's so busy, because the protagonist is so busy, she needs help looking after her apartment, and for this reason she decides to hire Emerence, an old woman from the neighborhood who comes highly recommended. Emerence works tirelessly. She is busy all day long. She is animated by a spirit of self-sacrifice that approaches martyrdom, but at the same time she's extremely opinionated, strong-willed, and can lash out and fly into states of extreme rage and actually be quite cruel at times. And the entire book really is simply about this relationship between these two women. It's about the complex, contradictory, and at times morbid bond that Emerence establishes with Magda. Emerence is truly one of the most peculiar literary characters I've encountered in a long time. In fact, it's impossible to do justice to her character in a short video, and the novel itself, in its almost 300 pages, can only really give you an outline of her psyche and her personality and her emotional state, her inner life. To give you a sense of the kind of character she is somebody who, as I said, works tirelessly all day long. She barely even sleeps. In fact, she doesn't even own a bed. She loves animals deeply and she adopts them whenever she can. She is flippant about religion and deeply skeptical, seemingly because of a fairly small offense that happened in church when she was a young woman. And most of all, maybe her defining feature for most of the book is that she is very secretive. In fact, she doesn't allow anybody inside her apartment. The door to her apartment becomes, in Magda's mind, the door to Emerence's forbidden city, to this mysterious place that Magda just cannot access, no matter how deep the bond of friendship between her and Emerence becomes in the course of the novel. Because she's such a peculiar character, Emerence appears under different lights at various points in the book. At times, she almost comes to look like a magical realist character, something out of a folk fairy tale, whereas at other times, her peculiarities led me to question her sanity, or at least her mental balance. But at the same time, you cannot really explain her away as somebody who's simply crazy, or somebody who is just a fairy godmother out of Hungarian fairy tales, really. As I said, her character is more complex and more contradictory than that. Magda, the narrator, talks a lot about being busy throughout the book. There is this constant sense that she has very little time for herself. She's always writing. She's busy with work on her books. She's busy with TV appearances. Later on, as she gained more popularity, she is busy with all the implications of this rising popularity. And this is very curious because it's inevitably contrasted throughout the book with the work that Emerence does, the very physical type of work, very different type of work that Emerence does all day long, not just in Magda's apartment, but in the entire neighborhood. Emerence is always cooking, she's always cleaning. Throughout the entire winter, she's always sweeping seemingly the entire neighborhood's entryways to their apartment buildings and to their homes. In fact, the difference between these two worlds, Emerence's and Magda's, comes very much to the fore later into the novel, with Emerence being very candid about what she really thinks of the intellectual world that Magda belongs to, what she thinks about writers, what she thinks about doctors, lawyers, professionals in general, all of these people who don't really get their hands dirty, who don't really work with their bodies, with their hands. The interaction between these very two worlds is the spark that gave the book much of its impetus, much of its power, at least for me. Writers, almost by definition, tend to be fairly bookish people. And there aren't that many writers who can capture working people and the mentality of working people very well in their fiction. There's a certain peculiar foolishness and wisdom in a lot of working women and working men, which is very different, in my experience at least, from the foolishness and wisdom of intellectuals. An exception to this rule, or if you will, the writer who can capture working people the best, to me, remains Steinbeck. John Steinbeck would be the greatest at capturing those types of characters. Magda Szabó's portrayal of a working woman in The Door is also brilliant and captures how Emerence, who is ignorant of the world of art and glamour that Magda, the narrator, belongs to, because of this, she can cast a new light on this world and look at this world in ways that Magda herself would never have considered. In a very peculiar and very remarkable scene in the book, Emerence visits a TV set where Magda is working and where they're filming a scene, and she is extremely indignant when she discovers that the producers of the show are using fans and are using other tricks to make the leaves of the trees move, to create this illusion that there's a wind blowing while they're filming the scene. And she calls Magda and all her colleagues clowns and con people, and people who just use cheap tricks to trick the viewer into thinking that something fake is actually real. And this is an overreaction, and it's obviously quite a silly point of view, but it also isn't. The woman also has a point. There is a certain the artistry involved in creating this fictional world is a form of dishonesty. And the book is really full of these types of paradoxes and conversations where these two different worlds collide in ways that are very stimulating, I find. As somebody who grew up in a working family myself, I'm definitely familiar with these short circuits where it becomes really difficult to explain to somebody who spends 10 hours plus every day standing up, working with their hands, working physically. It's hard to explain to them why your PhD thesis about Michael Chabon is relevant or why it matters. The Door explores these exchanges in a way that is very intriguing, but it's never pathetic, and it's never sentimental or cheap or dishonest or hypocritical, if you will. It reminded me a lot of Tove Ditlevsen's novels about her own career as a writer in Denmark, and it definitely reminded me a lot of Elena Ferrante's My Brilliant Friend, because of the strong friendship between these two somewhat different women brought together by this great affection that they share for one another. I should point out, however, that The Door is not a fast and engrossing novel the way My Brilliant Friend is. It's actually quite slow. Its pace is very calm, and it goes very deep into each of the episodes that take up the book. I struggled a little bit with its pace. That's probably why I found it a rather difficult read, but I think to the right kind of reader who's stimulated by this friendship, who is intrigued by the mystery of Emerence's character and her past, I think to those readers it's going to bring a lot of pleasure, especially if you can be patient enough to cope with the novel's pace. If you find it calming and stimulating again, rather than a hindrance to your experience. While it's by no means a page-turner, its plot is also not without its twists by any means, and I did find it intriguing, for sure. I look forward to hearing what you thought of the novel if you've read it. Whether you struggled with its rhythm ever so slightly the way I did, or whether you found it actually an easy and enjoyable and fast read instead. Did you find the relationship as curious as I did, as mysterious? And what did you think of the book? I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you as always for watching the review. I always appreciate it. Reading the book these last couple of weeks was a slightly surreal experience for me. This is possibly the first Hungarian novel that I have ever read. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I don't really know much about Hungarian literature. It's one of my many, many blind spots as a reader. I said that it was a little surreal because Hungary has been in my local news recently and in the Italian news more broadly speaking. A woman from my hometown was recently imprisoned in Hungary. Actually, not that recently. She was imprisoned in Hungary almost a year ago because she was protesting a Nazi parade in Budapest. And she still hasn't had a proper trial. She has been imprisoned in terrible, inhumane conditions. And all of this has been happening in the general disinterest of the world, really. And obviously that has nothing to do with the book. It has nothing to do with Hungarian literature. To be honest, I'm not sure it has too much to do with Hungary itself. It's really just about a woman facing hideous, horrible injustice. And Hungary is just a connection that came to mind that allowed me to talk to you about something that's been on my mind. And I'll leave links in the description box if you're curious to read more about this, because I think it's important that people learn about it. And I obviously sincerely thank you for listening to me talk about something that has nothing to do with the usual topics of my channel or with the subject of the video, but that, as I said, it's been on my mind and I wanted to share. So thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and bye everybody.